So hello and welcome to your practice today. We're going to get started in a seated position. So feel free to use anything you like to prop yourself up. I'm sitting on a folded blanket, but you might have a block or a cushion or anything along those lines. So once you've found a sense of comfort, you might be cross-legged or you might be sitting on the knees or anywhere else that allows you to kind of find a straight spine. And then you might close the eyes or settle the gaze towards the floor or something else that allows you to bring the attention internal and start to, first of all, notice the breath. And noticing the breath and how it is flowing and how it is feeling at this time of day. And start to invite a sense of smoothness, trying to cultivate rhythm. And you might start by looking to bring the inhale and the exhale to a consistent length, so a sense of matching or samavriti breath. And then start to elongate that exhale a little bit more. And to really soften and lengthen that exhale, you might kind of purse the lips as if you had a straw between the lips, and kind of gently allowing the breath to come out through that kind of narrow space through the mouth. Finding a sense of gentleness and then really allowing the inhale to happen automatically, happen naturally. And try not to let there be an over inhalation to compensate for the long exhalation. Look to find a real balance. And then letting that lengthening practice go, come to a sense of settled breath again, a quiet breath, a soft breath. And then gently opening the eyes if they're not already. And take a moment, bring the arms up into a cactus shape, take the elbows back behind you, and a little sense of opening the chest here, broadening, and filling up with that inhale. And then round and dome like we're coming into the seated cat-cow, drawing the elbows kind of around and away from you as they come together. And bringing in a little bit of spinal flexion, that rounding through the upper back, the chin to the chest, and the elbows might even come right down and towards the belly. And then moving like that with the breath. Inhale to open up. Exhale, round and curl. Hollow out the belly, bring the elbows in. Twice more to your breath rhythm. And back to neutral. And we'll add a little bit of twisting action here. So a couple of options. We'll bring the hands into center. And this kind of position as if you are holding a platter with the palms facing up. And this is your central place or your central point in the inhale breath. And then on the exhale, one hand across the body, other hand out to the side. So you might bring the hand across to opposite shoulder or more like the center of the chest as you gently rotate. And then inhale through center, exhale other side. Now if you prefer something a little bit with a bit more range of motion, it might be inhale, arms up, exhale into the twist. So there's two options, either like you're holding a bladder on the big reach up and then twist, reach up and twist. Let's take one or two more rounds, looking again for that sense of movement to the rhythm of your breath. And then coming into center to let that settle for a moment. Maybe the shoulders roll or anything else allows you to neutralize that movement. And then we'll come into tabletop position to set up for melting heart. So you may like to bring the blanket in underneath the knees for a little bit of extra support, a little bit of softening. And then for melting heart today, hands coming forward and wide. There's a sense of trying to keep the hips stacked over the knees as you start to extend the arms out. Now, if it's a little bit too extreme, reaching those hands wide and forward towards straight, then you might actually use a bend in the elbows and come down, but still looking for the sense of stacking, keeping the hips over the knees and encouraging a sense of the chest towards the floor. Maybe the forehead finds the mat. And you might prefer to bring the hands to stack its fists or stack the palms to support the forehead if you want it a little bit higher. Maybe you're a little bit more open, a little bit more flexible through this area of the body, and you're looking to bring the chin down to the mat with the arms outstretched. Really making it work for you and your body today. We'll take another 3 breaths. And then we're already coming up. And you might like to come back to a child's pose with the arms back, or you might prefer to sit up after that one and give the shoulders a roll, or even reverse it by bringing the hands around behind you, interlacing the fingers and opening the chest. And if you're in that child's pose, you can kind of do the same thing from child's pose if you like. And one more breath. And when you're ready, whether you're in child's pose or up on the knees, rise up to a high kneeling position, reach the arms. And then we'll add that lightning movement. So one hand will come to the low back, other arm reaching forward, and gaze towards that open shoulder. Inhale, reaching up. And then exhale, other side. And keep going with that rhythm. Another round, so one more to each side, or bring yourself to balance, whatever that means for you. Might be another 1.5 or another half. And then a moment to sit back on the heels, just for a breath, give the shoulders a roll. And then we'll do 2, maybe 3 rounds of both arms. So your both arm variation could be both arms outstretched, or draw them back like a cactus shape, or bring them both to the low back as you lower down. Really find that tone through the belly as you come up. If you want to add a little bit more challenge in the rise up, get a sense of hips moving forward and up. And find your 1 or 2 more. And we'll take our pause for this one in a tabletop and just settle for that moment or two. And then we'll start to add movement from tabletop. So extend the spine a little bit through the upper back, lift the gaze a little, open across the chest, creating space between the shoulders. And then start to round and dome this. Bend through the elbows and try and round into the low back, let the elbows come down before the hips come all the way back. And then rising up with control, taking it through tabletop, through into that chest forward space, this chakra Bharakanasana movement. Two or three more rounds. And then we'll add in down dog. So next time you come forward, tuck the toes and you can press the hips up and back to find down dog. Feel the feet if you wish. Any other movement, maybe that bend in the elbows, bend in the knees. And then we'll bring back the movement. So coming forward and down, tabletop, send the chest through for that upper back extension. And then down and back into that child's pose variation. Up and forward, tabletop, maybe through. You might even tuck the toes and make it upward facing dog. And then lift up and back, downward facing dog. Forward and down, maybe a moment in high plank to bring the knees down. And then back to child's. Forward to come up, maybe tabletop. We'll move it through. And then up and back, down dog. And find your rhythm, your variations. We'll take another 2 rounds. And eventually we'll pause in downward facing dog just for a breath or 2. And then slowly walk the hands back to the feet, meeting at the back of the mat, standing forward fold. Bend the knees as deep as you wish once you find your forward fold. No rush to get there. Maybe the hands reach for opposite elbows and take this movement from your dangling position. Maybe the movement with the head or sway side to side. If you prefer to be up a little bit higher and add this bending and straightening of the legs, maybe the forearms come up to rest on the thighs. Any other variation with the amount of bend in the knee, another variation with the arms, whatever serves you today. And pausing for a moment of stillness, maybe 2 or 3 breaths. And then curling all the way up to stand. Reach the arms to rise, to the toes if you wish. And then hands through center. Okay, let's move that blanket out of the way. And then we'll come again to reach the arms and rise up. Tiptoes if you wish. Maybe you prefer to keep the heels down, press the hips forward, add a little bit of spinal extension. And then slow lower down into your forward fold. Lift and lengthen, flat back halfway lift. Knees bend, hands plant to the mat, walk them forward so you find your way to a semblance of high plank. And then bring the knees down when you're ready. Gentle and controlled, lower to the belly. Pressing down through the feet, adjust and shuffle so you feel nice and long and spacious across the hips. And maybe you come up onto the fingertips. If you prefer to hover the hands and take more of a baby cobra, feel free. Otherwise, lifting up for spinal extension, and we'll add a little bit of movement here. This twisting movement, one shoulder comes in towards the midline, and then inhale back through center. Exhale into the twist. And if you're in that baby cobra option, maybe you're hovering up and lowering down. And if you want to add a little bit more to the twist, as one shoulder comes in towards the midline, draw the opposite heel in as well. There's a sense of switch change going on.
And 1 or 2 more, bring yourself to that even amount to each side. And then come to pause in neutral for a moment. That might be hands underneath the forehead or any other configuration. If you prefer to turn your head to one side, of course, feel free. And try and soften through the lower body, soften out of the glutes and the thighs. And then find hands and knees. Press yourself back. Maybe tabletop any other movement from there. And then eventually downward facing dog. And then we'll make our way to the top of the mat. We will be coming through lunges, so feel free to slide that blanket back in now as you walk yourself into standing forward fold at the top of the mat. And then curl up to stand. And reach to toes if you wish. And then hands settle in the center of the chest. And then we'll begin with the lunges, arms reaching. And then forward fold. Lift and lengthen flat back. Plant the hands, we'll step the right foot back, bring the right knee down to the mat or the blanket, wherever it might be. And then rise up, flying this first lunge position. And then bring the hands to the center of the chest. And get a sense of lifting the chest up into the thumbs, anchoring the thumbs into that sternum, and a gentle rotation to the left over that front leg. And holding here. See if you can create a scissoring action, the front leg and back leg drawing in towards the midline and towards each other at the same time. And then if you wish to deepen that twist slightly, you might come forward and take the elbow across the knee. And try not to come into force if you're taking that variation, or you might prefer to reach the arms wide and take the back hand down the back leg and the front arm up. Again, either way you're taking it, try not to crowd the low back, try and get the twist happening from the middle of the spine. One more breath here. And then this top hand will track its way down to the floor and tuck the back toes and lift that back knee. And then this left arm will reach to the ceiling. So right hand down, left arm up. One more breath. And then take that top arm, that left arm, reach it forward and down to frame the foot. And then draw yourself back like a version of half splits. If you have blocks, you might want to use them. And just here for a breath or two. Maybe a little bit of fold. If it's there, you might be up a little bit higher, working on drawing that left leg back into the hip socket a little. And then ease yourself forward, frame the foot, step back, downward facing dog. Any little movements here, pedaling out the feet. And then reaching the right leg high. And draw the knee forward towards the nose, step that right foot through between the hands. And give it a little helping hand if it needs it as you bring the back knee down. And we'll bring this right foot a little bit wider. So it's out to the right. You've got both hands on the inside line. And then you might start to extend that back leg back a little bit. And we'll find this lizard lunge position. Again, if you have blocks or anything else that you can bring in underneath the hands to bring the floor a little bit closer, go for it. Maybe you bring the blocks in underneath the forearms if you want to come down in that way. And feel free. One option is to add a twist here. So the left hand this time will stay down and the right arm round and back. If it's within your reach, you might bring in that reach for the foot and add the quad stretch if you wish, or maybe an active variation, reaching hand to foot, foot to hand, or even pushing the hand and the heel in towards each other. One more breath. And then return the hands back to the top of the mat. And then option here, you can kind of adjust and navigate, any way that serves you, and we'll meet at the top of the mat. So I'm going to step forward into Malasana and then come up to stand, but you might prefer to step into a standing forward fold. Really up to you. If you're in that Malasana, sink the hips, maybe a little bit of movement. You might bring the arms to the inside line of the knees. Get that lift and length. And then planting the hands, adjusting your way into rising up. Lifting, maybe lengthening, and then hands through center. Moment to pause, sealing in between sides. Option. Settle here, maybe the eyes are closed, maybe a little shake out before you pause. This opportunity to notice how the body feels, notice how the breath is flowing. And then we'll take second side. So from the top of the mat, once again, arms reach. You find your forward fold. Lift and lengthen. And then plant the hands. Step the left foot back first this time. Left knee down to the mat. Rise for that first low lunge, arms reach. And then bring the hands down through to the center of the chest, of the chest up into the hands. Get a sense of this spaciousness through the middle of the spine, first of all. And then gently rotating to the right, this time over that front leg once again. And a sense of inhale, clearing space and lift. And exhale into the twist. And then you might take that deepening option, bringing the elbow across, or if you prefer, arms wide, and back arm down, the back leg, front arm. Reach for the ceiling. Another breath or two. And then transitioning, so that left arm, which would be the top arm if you were reaching it up, or actually the bottom arm if you were coming forward. And bring that left hand down to the inside line and reach the right arm up. And again, you can tuck the toe and lift the knee up off of the mat if you wish. Nice, full breath. And then we'll reach forward with this top arm. Come on down with the back knee if it's not already. And then draw yourself back into that half splits, that Ardha Hanumanasana. Stabilize a sense of kind of levelness or neutralness with the pelvis. And then start to draw that right leg back into the socket. Maybe there's space to fold, or you're sitting up tall, really working on finding length through the hamstring here, through the calf muscle, or anywhere along that back chain. Might even notice it more in the surface of the foot, or upright round by the neck. Notice the body, notice the breath. And then ease your way forward, frame the foot, step on back, downward facing dog. And pedaling out of the feet. And as we pause here, maybe you prefer to take a little bit more movement here. Feel free to move through flow if that's what serves you. And then when you're ready, now lift that left leg high, knee towards the nose, plant the foot between the hands, give it that little helping hand that needs it. And then start to shuffle that left foot out a little wider both hands to the inside line, back knee down, and those lizard lunge variations. So you might be working with hands or blocks underneath the hands. You might be coming down onto the forearms here. Or maybe you're choosing to add that twist instead, which would be the right hand down, the left arm round the back. Maybe even the quad stretch if you're adding it in. Another breath or 2 or 3. And then your transition might be to step into that standing forward fold at the top of the mat, or keep that front foot wide and step the back foot forward and wide and come into Malasana. Once again, maybe the hips are low or a little bit higher, maybe there's movement, stillness. And then taking your time to shuffle and adjust your way into rising up to stand, reaching tall. And then let that side settle, hands through center. And this opportunity once again to pause, check in, this opportunity to kind of notice the effects, notice the sensations of the body, tuning into the flow of the breath. And then your option, you might like to reach the arms, fold forward and take it through a round of flow. It will eventually meet in a seat. So I'm going to go straight there, but feel free to flow it out if you wish. I'm going to set up for Bharakanasana to start with. So soles of the feet together, knees wide. And then you may have some support underneath the thighs or the knees there to give you some kind of feedback so that you can press downwards. You may like to generate that feedback with the hands. So bring the hands in underneath, pressing down into the hands. And you might even reverse that, pressing down with the hands and pushing up with the knees. And then look for this length out of low back. So can you sit a little taller before we come into fold? And folding from this Bharakanasana position can be quite challenging depending on your flexibility. If you're up here, it can feel really awkward to fold forward. So you might prefer to come back and more rock the pelvis forward from this leaning back position and open through the front of the hips first and foremost. And that might involve a few little kind of butterfly bounces, or this just movement of pulsing through the knees. Or you might prefer to be on a hold of the shins, almost prying yourself open with the elbows as you come into fold, or reaching the arms forward as you come into fold. And really up to you. As we take another 5 rounds of breath here or so, another 30 seconds or so. And then when you're ready, coming up from there or forward from there or wherever you are, if you want to take a little bit of movement, feel free. But we will come back to this position as our starting point as we move kind of side to side. So pick a side, any side, keep one foot exactly as it is and take the other foot wide. So we're kind of in this half butterfly, half wide-legged forward fold position. And then we'll again attempt to fold forward. So
I'm sitting on the edge of a blanket to create that anterior, that forwards kind of pelvic tilt, to set up the low back nicely. And so you might be, again, working with the fold forward here, or another opportunity to lean back, working with this fold and coming straight forward. We will come to the side in a moment, but coming straight forward for this first one. And that straightness might not necessarily be stillness. You might have a little bit of side to side action that helps you open into a little bit more space to slowly fold. Another 2 or 3 breaths. And then ease your way up. So a couple of options from here. One, rotate, and then we'll fold to the side. Yeah, if that feels a little bit crowded through the low back, particularly on the side of the bent leg, and you might bring this foot a little bit more across and set up in that way. Or you might like a little bit more of a side body experience here. So that way the arm will slide along the leg, you might reach for the toe, and the top arm could reach over or rest or reach around, support in some way so that the side body lengthens but still feels stable. You've got lots of space and you've got different variations, bringing the forearm down and reaching all the way over to the foot with the top arm. Feel free to go for it. Work with the variation that serves you. And coming to that place where you can notice the body and notice the breath. And it can be nice if you're looking for that side body opening to actually reach back and keep the chest open. And the tendency when we're trying to work the side body length is that there's temptation to bring this top shoulder forward and down when we're reaching over. And it kind of takes you out of the side body and brings in more of a twist. If you're looking for that side body, arm could reach back. Keep that chest open. One more breath. And then ease your way up, taking your movement that feels good, which might even include pressing down through the shin, lifting the hips up, or anything else that feels like a nice relief and release. And then second side. So bring the other leg back into that Bharakanasana. And opposite leg straight and long. Lift up tall, space out a low back, and we'll come forward down through the midline first of all. Again, it might be hands to support, might be coming into the fold, or you might be sitting back. You can kind of combine the two. Hands back can be a nice support for that low back. And find a sense of stability through that knee with any of those props, any of those supports underneath it that you had on the other side. And these last 2 breaths, get a real sense of using the floor, kind of anchoring down through the legs, drawing in through the midline, and generating length out of the low back by using the floor to ease your way into the fold. And then with control, coming up and out of there. Okay, so there's 2 options. You might be taking it more into that Janushirshasana variation, bringing the heel in towards the midline, or taking it into this side body variation, so sliding the arm down. Maybe you're taking hold of the big toe. If you are taking the big toe, it's not a matter of pulling on the big toe, just a kind of resting point there. And then the arm can reach over and out or back if you're working
on really staying in that frontal plane or that side body open and keeping it all lateral and trying to stay out of the twist. Another 4 or 5 rounds of breath. And in your eyes. Any counter movement, again, if you took that variation, pressing the shin down, lifting the hips, go for it. Even out your sides, or anything else you took. You might like to bring the legs in. And give them a windscreen wipe. And then we'll bring it into one last seated pose here, our wide-legged forward fold, Konasana. And a sense of grounding down, drawing up tall. So looking for length out of that low back, as always in these postures. And a sense of almost legs drawing into the socket, so that activity through the legs, the lift, and again, you might be back. And this one in particular can be quite crowding through the hips, so you might be back working on that space, working on the pelvic tilt. Or maybe you're coming forward with the hands back, or coming forward with the hands forward, arms down. Really working with any variation that serves you, so that you get the sensation of space and length through the hips, through the legs. Nothing wrong with a little bit of movement, a little bit of side to side, a little bit of in and out, a little bit of bend in the knees. Another 5 or 6 rounds of breath here. And then when you're ready, slowly ease your way up. And counter movement again, maybe side to side. It can be nice to come into a little ball, closing down after all of that opening. And then we'll come down to a reclined position. And take your time. Ease your way down. And then we'll find knees drawing in towards the chest for a moment. Bringing the hands over the top of the knees and this Bharakanasana movement here. Drawing the knees in towards the chest on the exhale breath. Pressing away towards straight arms on the inhale breath. And then very gently bring the feet down. Adjust so you're set up for a constructive rest and preparation for bridge pose. And I'm going to guide us through some undulating bridges, but if you prefer to stay with the pelvic tilts, which we'll do at the start, then please do so. If you prefer to take it further into bridge hold or a wheel pose, be my guest, absolutely use this time when you're ready, we'll start with a few pelvic tilts, just noticing that movement. Inflating the belly with the inhale breath and rocking the pelvis forward. You might even notice the chin tucking in towards the chest. And exhale, deflating the belly, rocking the pelvis back, feeling low back press into mat. And you might stick with that. We'll start to turn it into more undulating bridges, pressing down through the feet to lift the hips. And then slowly lowering with the exhale. You might use a round of breath in the pelvic tilt, inhaling into the anterior tilt, the arch in the back. Exhaling into the posterior tilt, the flattening of the back into the mat. And then stay flattened into the mat, push down through the feet, start to lift the hips. On the next inhale, to come into that bridge lift, doesn't have to be super high. And then on the exhale, lowering down. So that's the rhythm, that's the pattern if you're working with those undulating bridge with pelvic tilts. And might be a little bit simpler for you, just lifting and lowering the hips with the breath. Or maybe you're lifting and holding in bridge. Whatever movement you're choosing to do, try and bring as much awareness to the movement as you can. And if bringing awareness to the movement means you lose the rhythm of movement and breath, and just be really curious about the movement first of all. Stay aware of the movement, the articulation of any of the joints as you move, and then start to bring the breath back in once you feel connected to the movement. One or two more rounds of breath, and then take your counter movement if you need it, which might be a little bit of twisting, easing the knees from side to side, or that spinal twist and hold. And then your option, if you wish to come into a supported bridge and take it into waterfall to hold, then you might bring in a folded blanket, folded towel. If you've got a bolster, perfect, or a couple of blocks. Maybe you prefer to bring yourself to the wall, lie side on, and then swing the legs up the wall to find that shape of support, legs up the wall pose. And we'll find a few rounds of breath here if you're with me, with support under the hips. And come into that tuck of the legs and then lift the feet up towards the ceiling, nice and soft through the feet. Let that all settle. I'm using this as preparation for Shavasana. So starting to come into that Shavasana state of mind, that relinquishing breath control, inviting a real sense of softness or even surrender, this very intentional letting go of any of the holding on that might be happening through the body in whatever way. And taking your time to make your way towards whatever your Shavasana shape is. And you might be in it. You might be happy legs up the wall and staying there. You might be happy in waterfall. And do stay there if you are. Otherwise, making your way to your Shavasana shape. And setting yourself either on your back or on your side or on your front. With any kind of support that you might prefer to allow yourself to settle. Really working to find places of ease in the body. Scanning through and noticing where there is a real sense of ease, a real sense of softness, comfort and freedom. And as you focus on those points,
Try and invite them to expand throughout the body. Allowing the lower body, the feet, the ankles, the legs to be soft and heavy. The upper body, shoulders, the arms, the spine, soft and heavy. And softening through the face, through the jaw. Softening through the exhale breath, maybe even a sigh. In these last few moments of Shavasana. And if you do have longer, as always, please do feel free to stay here, enjoying the assimilation process through a long Shavasana. If you're sealing it off with me, maybe you invite a little bit more breath, maybe a little bit of movement, maybe a change in your posture, coming up to a seat or rolling onto your side, or a simple change of gesture, hands to the heart or folded into prayer. And we'll seal the practice off with one more intentional breath together, bringing all of your awareness in towards this next inhale as you fill up. And soft, easeful, releasing exhale, letting the practice go, finding a real sense of completion. And thank you so much for practicing with me today. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Namaste.